our weekly political panel debate show. We are streaming live on our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube pages and on our website at lbc.co.uk. Joining me in the studio today are Peter Bone, the Conservative MP for Wellingborough, Chris Bryant, Labour MP for Rhondda, William Clouston, who is leader of the SDP, and the person whose name I can't pronounce, Joy Lo Dico. Have I got that right? Marvellous. Columnist for the Evening Standard. We're ready to go. We've got several questions lined up, but we'd love some more. 0345 6060 973 if you'd like to put a question to our panel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Welcome to you all. Let's go straight to our first question. Anthony is in Staines. Anthony, what's your question, please?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Well, I'd like to ask you all, 40 years since Margaret Thatcher was elected Prime Minister, our first female Prime Minister, how would getting rid of the second female Prime Minister help the country, and particularly the economy and security?
Peter Bone.
Well, I saw the replay of the 1979 election on the BBC on Monday.
The whole of it?
No, not the whole of it. But the difference between Margaret Thatcher and Mrs May is just enormous. And if Mrs May was to resign and there'd be a new Prime Minister, that would be better for the country and better for the Conservative Party.
But the optics of getting rid of a second successive female Prime Minister are not good, are they? Because the Conservative Party took a very long time to recover from the dethroning of Margaret Thatcher. Do you not fear that we could be in for a repeat?
Well, all Prime Ministers, I suppose, are eventually forced out one way or the other. But in the case of Margaret Thatcher, that was clearly a huge mistake. Getting rid of Mrs May would be a great success. How do you know that? We don't know who would succeed her. It could be a case of stick to nurse for fear of worse. Well, judging by what my colleagues say and what members of the party say, they want to change the Prime Minister and get somebody who would lead the country and get what they would call a proper Brexit. And we can't carry on with a Prime Minister said 108 times in the House of Commons that we're going to leave the EU on the 29th of March. It's not so much now about the issue of Brexit, it's more about the issue of trust. But I can't remember how you voted on the withdrawal agreement in the end. Did you stick to your guns and vote against it all the time? It was as bad the third time as it was the first time, so I voted against it. Well, so you're the reason that we're still in the EU. Shouldn't you be apologising to the British nation? I've been a Eurosceptic for all my life, all my political life. If I thought this deal took us out of the European Union, wouldn't I be the first one to sign? Wouldn't Bill Cass be the first one to sign it? Wouldn't John Redwood be the first one? None of them have. Well, it would take us out of the political institutions of the EU. It does not take us out of the European Union. You know that, Iain, and I know that. Peter, legally it does. Never mind legally, it is in name only. It's the worst situation. It's unbelievable that we could get a deal that would keep us possibly permanently in this limbo without even the voting in the EU. In fact, we wouldn't even be able to get out of the situation. There wouldn't be a mechanism for withdrawing. Joy?
Well, it's interesting that he raises the fact it's two female prime ministers, one after the other. Now, when Theresa May went, her successor, John Major, had a terrible election. Margaret Thatcher went, you mean? Sorry, Margaret Thatcher. Her successor, John Major, had a terrible election. And not the first one. The first one he won. He won, but very, very, very marginally. And we then had another 4 or 5 years of absolute chaos before you finally get to Tony Blair. Why does Theresa May command so little respect amongst the Tory party? You can see exactly why on all sorts of Brexit terms, but you also get the feeling there's a lot of muttering in the background, particularly by men in suits, that she just isn't up to the job. She's a woman. She can't command the respect of her cabinet. Well, to be fair, it's not just the men in suits. Andrea Jenkins got up at BMQs today and told her to her face, "You should quit." Well, Andrea Jenkins is a very punchy politician, and well done her. I think Theresa May has got at some point to take a view on her own position, and rather than letting the rest of the party dictate her future, she should probably think about it. Your questioner asked about economics and security, and how removing her would help with security in this country. The big question there is Huawei, and I wonder why he's raised that. You would think that cybersecurity and her latest move on Huawei meant that...
well, you never know. That might come up a little bit later.
Really?
If someone wants to ask about that. I'm not saying it will. I don't know. 0345 6060 973 if you would like to ask about Huawei or indeed anything else. Chris Bryant, do you have any sympathy with Theresa May?
I tried to summon it from the depths of my soul. The thing is, it feels as if she's already gone. I mean, she has no authority anymore. You can see it in Parliament. I mean, as often as not, the green benches on the Tory side, when the Prime Minister is speaking, are completely empty or half empty. I've never seen that before under any previous Prime
Even
Minister.
in PMQs nowadays, there are gaps.
Exactly. I mean, and I didn't bother going today because I had an important meeting about melanoma instead. But the sign of that is that Cabinet... collective responsibility has collapsed, so that's why Gavin Williamson did or didn't do whatever he didn't do last week, and then nobody chose to believe the Prime Minister when that was talked about in the House of Commons. David Lidington was doing his best to defend the Prime Minister, but Tory after Tory was standing up to say, well, where's the proof? Show us the proof. And frankly, I'm not going to listen to any more Conservative MPs who tell me that Jeremy Corbyn is a threat to the security of this country, because Gavin Williamson, the Defence Secretary, according to the Prime Minister, was a threat to the security of this country.
How does she manage to stay on, though? I mean, she is clinging to office like a limpet, and there doesn't seem to be anyone that says, well, you must go. It's almost as if she's sticking her fingers in her ears and going, la, la, la.
No, completely. Well, and that's been her style, hasn't it? And it's interesting. I keep a diary, and I always used to write about Theresa May. Yes, I do.
That's interesting.
You feature occasionally.
Oh, dear.
So just bear that in mind. As does Peter Bone. But anyway, but I remember I used to write when she became Home Secretary, she'd been the surprise figure who was actually better than I thought she would be, even though she's still a Conservative and I'm Labour and all the rest of it. I thought she was better. However, as Prime Minister, her greatest strength has become her greatest weakness. We needed to be in a position where we negotiated. She called an election which was completely unnecessary out of hubris and pride, and it led to, and then refused to take part in the election debates, which meant the Conservative Party lost their majority, and now we have a Parliament which seems unable to do anything. My biggest fear at the moment is it's perfectly possible that Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn might do a deal about Brexit, which nobody votes for other than Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn, because it'll say something about a customs union but won't say anything about a confirmatory referendum. So I won't vote for it, and the majority of Labour MPs won't vote for it. And because it says something about a customs union, hardly any Tories will vote for it.
So it wouldn't get through, would it?
So we have to press the reset button in some way, and the only way I can actually see now is a new Prime Minister.
And, I mean, Peter Bone, have you declared who you would want to see as the new Prime Minister?
Well, I'd obviously support anyone the Conservative members chose, but I think it should be somebody who's clearly a Brexiteer, because I think that's what the party wants. Can't be somebody who's in the Cabinet, because they're still signed up to this.
You're narrowing them down.
Well, I think it comes down to people who left the Cabinet, because it has to be someone of senior. So it's either Esther McVey, Dominic Raab, Boris Johnson, or David Davis. David Davis has ruled himself out. So if you then look at the others, you say, who's the best person to win the next general election? Who's run a large city, for instance? It's clear to me that if you follow logic,
utterly failed running London.
And someone who upsets Chris Bryant clearly is the man to be Prime Minister. So it has to be Boris.
What we should do, we should pass a law immediately which says that anybody who has, we should go and check their stable and see if they've got a unicorn in it. And if they've got a unicorn, they are not suitable for Prime Minister. Boris only has unicorns in his stable.
Okay, so who do you think would put the fear of God into Labour, if anyone? It's
quite difficult to see at the moment. One of the weird things about this Parliament is that quite a lot of the really good and effective people are on the back benches rather than on the front benches, and that's certainly true in the Conservative Party at the moment. I actually think probably another woman MP might be
Penny Mordaunt.
I went to a lunch where Emily Thornberry said she expected Penny Mordaunt to be the next leader of the Conservative Party.
I think the next leader will be Jeremy Hunt, actually, but he doesn't inspire the.
Would you be happy with Penny Mordaunt, Peter?
She fails my test because she stayed in the cabinet and
She's
signed
dipped
up.
her hand in the blood of checkers.
Yeah, so for that, she's a great politician. She's going to do very well. But in the circumstances, we need someone who's not in the cabinet.
William Clouston, leader of the SDP. Where do you stand on this? Because I gather the SDP does support Brexit.
We support Brexit. Yeah, we've been a Eurosceptic party for many, many years. It goes back to the Scarborough Conference of '89. I don't know if you remember when there was a bomb scare.
Sadly, I don't.
Oh well, you see, there's a bomb scare, and David Owen ended up speaking on the steps outside the Spa. Yeah, we're a Eurosceptic party, so we supported WTO Brexit now because that's the only option which actually honours it. Can I address the question?
Yep, do.
So Mrs. Thatcher, I think Mrs. Thatcher, by the time she actually went, it was time enough to go. I think she'd lost her way, and actually the major government that followed it was actually an underrated government. It quietly governed, and it got massacred when Blair got in. But actually, it wasn't a bad government. It was certainly better than she would have done had she stayed on. As regards Mrs. May, the fact that she's female has nothing to do with it. She's not very good. She's made terrible errors in negotiating with the EU. Don't bluff the EU. Don't bluff the EU and then get found out. That's been the cardinal error. Just don't do that. I think the end, when she finally goes, we may have street parties and a lot of celebration. But I think she reminds me of the sort of, if you speak to insolvency practitioners, who are experienced and they go into companies that are failing, quite often the MD is sitting at the desk ringing people up and sort of, I'm still, and literally has to be taken out, literally, so it's over. And I think it's rather like that with Mrs. May.
I won't be celebrating incidentally when she goes. I'm not a fan of hers as Prime Minister, but I won't be celebrating because I just think the country's in a terrible state.
I agree. I don't think it's the answer to any question. Actually, I think British politics is in serious trouble.
It's not
anyway,
but it won't solve anything.
Yep.
But without it, we can't solve anything. Without her moving on now, we can't.
I agree.
And one of the difficulties for the Labour Party is we can't negotiate effectively with her about a Brexit deal because she isn't going to be the person who's going to be implementing it.
And that's the problem for these cross-party talks, isn't it? That she can agree what she likes, but Boris Johnson, if he becomes leader, he's going to say, well, I'm not going to be bound by that. Anthony in Staines would like to come back. What do you think of what you've heard, Anthony?
What about Peter Bone's choices? As Eric Morecambe would say, a load of rubbish. What do I think of it so far? Utter rubbish. Esther McVeigh, she would turn the voters off like, I don't like to say. Dominic Raab, no experience, useless. I would say stick with Theresa May because don't forget, Margaret Thatcher, when she first came in, was seen as an utter failure. And of course, it was only the Falklands that rescued her and the economy.
No, it wasn't. That's a rewriting of history to pretend that it was just the Falklands War which rescued her. If you look back at the opinion polls of that time, the Tories were rising in the opinion polls way before the Falklands War happened.
But she certainly was not thought to be a success for the first sort of 2 or 3 years.
I have to say, in my constituency in the Rhondda, she was never thought to be a success at all, of any kind whatsoever.
She was. Iain's right. Actually, she was rising in the polls, and the first iteration, the first phase of the SDP in '81. From the moment of the inception of that event, life was more difficult for the SDP because the broad direction of the polls was against us. From that moment, that was the 50% poll. That was the high point.
So this new iteration of the SDP, you've got, I know Patrick O'Flynn, former UKIP MEP, he's standing for you in the European elections.
Peterborough.
Is it in the by-election?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
What is different? I think we probably do. I think we probably do now.
We don't know who they are.
What is different about this version of the SDP?
We had when you're trying to revive a party from grassroots, we got kicked to the grassroots when Owen left in 1990, and it's one of the more interesting things in British politics that the SDP survived, but it did survive largely down to sort of dedicated groups of social democrats in pockets, some quite strong, East Yorkshire, South Wales actually, in Neath, Port Talbot, places like that. We had to revive it from very, very small numbers, and so the start of last year, we had a look at it and said, look, the first thing we need to do is be clear about what sort of centrist you are, because centrism is a much abused and it's a very vague term. You've got, on the one hand, you've got sort of Maurice Glassman's Blue Labour centrism and Giles Fraser's centrism, which is really quite different to the sort of split the difference Lib Demery that you get, or the sort of Change UK stuff. So the first thing was to get clear about that. How much did we take from the original SDP? Most of it. I mean, the social market is the key social and economic policy which we've taken on.
You mentioned Maurice Glassman and Giles Fraser there. Giles Fraser does a podcast called Confessions, which Maurice Glassman featured in a few months ago.
You
it's
did?
An hour long, and I did indeed.
Yeah.
That one was one of the best hours podcasts I've ever heard. I can highly recommend it. Right, Anthony, thank you very much for your question. We'll take some more questions in a moment. 0345 6060 973 if you'd like to ask our panel a question. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
So I still remember the feeling of walking into my GCSEs. I think the weeks before, I kind of thought good was going to be good enough. But then I remember in the final lesson before the exams, our teacher left notes on our desks. Mine said, if you're going to think at all, think big. And if you're going to think big, think bigger. I was thinking small, but she inspired me to think otherwise.
Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. As a new teacher, you'll start on a minimum salary of £23,000 to £29,000 depending on location. Search Get Into Teaching.
Experience the thrill and excitement of a cup final at the home of cricket.
What a game of cricket we've seen.
The Royal London One Day Cup final takes place at Lord's on Saturday the 25th of May.
Away leg side. Gone. Amazing scene.
Tickets are available from just £25. History is made at Lord's. Tickets on sale now.
Swell Heating is on a myth-busting mission. Painting your radiators black won't make them hotter. But there is lots of smart technology that can cut your heating bills. For specialist advice on innovative heating devices, visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Ah, spring. A time for new lambs, new birds, new bees, and a new boiler from British Gas. Looking to bring new life to your home? We're with you. So our new boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit with no deposit required and a 5-year British Gas warranty. Plus you'll get £200 off a new boiler when you book a quote by the 31st of May. And our existing home care customers will get £500 off. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
This spring, spend your money as wisely as you spend your time. Discover the Skoda Karoq. With up to £1,950 towards your finance deposit, 5.9% APR representative, a service plan for £159 and 3 years roadside assistance. Driven by something different. Skoda. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan, 18s and over subject to status, ordered by July 1st. T's and C's apply, excludes SE Technology. Indemnities may be required. Skoda Financial Services. Visit skoda.co.uk.
You've got plenty going on between now and August the 29th, so here's the question. Do you have the time to make a PPI claim before then? If not, don't panic, because here at the Claims Guys, we do have the time and the experience to manage the claims process for you. So if you've got more important things to do than manage a PPI claim, just text ANSWER to 66777. Text ANSWER to 66777 now.
The Claims Guys.
Alternatively, you can complain free to your lender or the Financial Ombudsman.
Radio, playlists and podcasts.
Where it's all together and all for free.
Global Player. Download it from your App Store now. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
21 minutes past 8 here on LBC. You're listening to Cross Question. Our guest today, Peter Bone, Conservative MP for Wellingborough. Chris Bryant, Labour MP for... Is it just Rhondda or the Rhondda or Rhondda Valley?
It is none of those things.
Oh dear.
It is the Rhondda. A double D is TH. Yes, you can.
Can I?
Yes,
the Rhondda.
You can. Rhondda.
Rhondda. I could do Llanelli.
Yes, exactly. So you can do Rhondda.
Marvellous.
If you could get the speaker to get it right, it'd be nice as well.
We might come on to speakership later, you never know. William Clouston is leader of the SDP and Joy Lo Dico is an Evening Standard columnist. Right, let's go to your next call. David is in... But before we do that, though, I should remind you, you can watch us live on Facebook, Twitter, on our YouTube channel and on our website at lbc.co.uk. David's in Paddington. What's your question, David?
I'd like to ask Peter Bone, first of all, if I may, Jeremy Hunt saying today that there'd be consequences for Iran if they go back to enriching uranium in the nuclear deal. Is this not a change of Conservative and government policy? As a year ago, they were saying no, they'd like to stick to the nuclear plan and not support what the US and Israel were saying. And Germany apparently are sticking to it. They'd like to keep the nuclear deal. Is it a change of policy? And what would those consequences mean?
Well, I'm not going to come to Peter first because I came to him first on the last question. William Clouston.
Well, I think it's a real pity that the West has divided on this, and I think we'd achieve better results if we hadn't. And I think but I think actually in the broader sense, it's going to happen more. I think what we're witnessing is a sort of change to the post-war consensus in everything we do now, and I think it's and as soon as Mr. Trump got in, I think it's very, very difficult to hold the line between what he wants, and he will do his own thing, and what the European Union wants, and Britain is sort of stuck in the middle actually in this.
But David is suggesting that Britain has distanced itself from other European countries on this, which I have to say I didn't detect in Jeremy Hunt's statement today.
No, I don't.
I think he was saying, well, if Iran now goes ahead with its threat articulated by President Rouhani this morning, that they would go back to or restart their enrichment programs, then of course there would be consequences for that. I don't see that as a split from what France, Germany, anybody else is saying. Chris?
No, I rather agree with you. I didn't think there was a big difference between the UK, France and Germany, and I think that that's important. I wish Trump hadn't gone off on this expedition, because I think it's very dangerous for the world. I don't want to fully trust the Iranians, and we have to watch the implementation of the accord very closely, but it was a tough battle, that one, to secure that. Incidentally, one of the tiny signs that we're not in a good state in the UK is that we don't have a Middle East minister at the moment. We've not had one for 6 weeks.
Why is that?
Because Alistair Burt resigned, and
but they've replaced all the others. So why haven't they replaced him?
Who knows?
He made a bid on this programme last week to have his old job back.
Yeah, that's what it is, Ian. They're keeping his job back and forth.
Well, why not just reappoint him?
Exactly.
Get it over
they must do one or the other.
Nobody's going to criticise him for doing that, are they?
No, but he knows that he would have to resign again when it comes to the next vote, I think, is the problem. So, but there's a lot of recurrence. I mean, the honest truth is that everybody feels in Parliament as if we're all sort of suspended. We're in suspended animation, waiting for the next thing to happen, which is going back to the conversation we had earlier. I thought the Iranians were naughty today, however, because they were effectively saying that we, the Europeans, had to sort out the Americans and to kind of overcome the Americans. Sanctions regime that they've instituted.
Best of luck.
I think that's difficult for us to do.
But isn't this actually more about internal Iranian politics, where Rouhani has to say tough things in order to keep on the side of the mullahs?
No, I think this is a complete misjudgment by Trump. Complete misjudgment by Trump.
I would say Trump and Rouhani are almost as bad as each other. But we've got the US are sending a carryover there. There's all sorts of potential ramifications. Are the Iranians going to close the Straits of Hormuz? Does the oil price all start shooting up? But this is Trump looking for his next opponent. He's looking for the next. We mentioned sort of Thatcher and the Falklands, and understood that wasn't necessarily it. But Trump keeps needing to find an enemy around the world.
Is that really fair? Because he's always said he doesn't want America to get involved in foreign escapades. He's actually been quite isolationist.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of talk and drum beating. I mean, he goes to North Korea and there's all the sagas there. Venezuela.
Well, hang on. He's been a peacemaker in North Korea.
Well, he has and he hasn't. He went there, first of all, by kind of, being strong-armed and then going into talks. In Venezuela, his administration very much has recommended that Guaido is recognised.
So is virtually every other country in the world, apart from Russia, Iran and Momentum.
But led by the US, who want to see that change, and then Iran.
Do you not want to see that change?
I do want to see that
change.
Well,
there you go. You're on the same side as Donald Trump.
Seems to be threatening military intervention.
That's correct. Trump is threatening military intervention. Trump seems to be threatening, or at least manoeuvring towards threatening military intervention in Iran. And we'd got round the table, we talked, we'd cut a deal. It was actually an extraordinary moment. So I think it becomes quite interesting when Trump arrives here. whether the stakes again have been raised on yet another issue between us and the US, and how long do we keep walking alongside them?
Well, Pompeo today has had a right old go at the UK, hasn't he? Saying on Huawei and a series of other different things, he doesn't think that we are secure partners any longer.
He's saying on Huawei, he's saying nothing that he hadn't said before. Actually,
no, I know. But he was having a right here to say.
He was having a right old go at Jeremy Corbyn. That's what he was doing.
It's quite impolite to say on British soil.
He's also done that as well. Yes,
true. Something you would never dream of doing yourself, Chris.
I'm virtually a saint, as you know. Ian.
Exactly. You should be canonised. Peter Bone. The question was kind of directed at you. Do you accept the premise of the question that Jeremy Hunt has changed policy?
Well, as the other guest said, I didn't read that today, and it seems to me, in relation to President Trump, his tactic is to say extreme things and negotiate back from it to stop something happening. And who's to say that's not a bad policy? North Korea seems to have had some effect.
He's big enough to have his own policy. That's the difference.
How has Jeremy Hunt differed as Foreign Secretary from the man that you want to be the next leader, Boris Johnson?
Well, I think Jeremy Hunt is a very good Foreign Secretary.
As opposed to the last one, yes, quite.
And the previous one was a very good Foreign Secretary too. But we're looking for someone to be Prime Minister, not Foreign Secretary.
But his record as Foreign Secretary, does that really encourage you to have confidence that he would be a good Prime Minister?
Yeah.
In what way? What did he do as Foreign Secretary that impressed you?
Well, it seemed to me that as far as I'm aware, we didn't get ourselves into any wars or any disasters because of it. There will always be a lot of spinning against Boris, as you know, because some sections of the community don't think he's the right person. But he seemed to do a perfectly good job to me, so Jeremy Hunt at the moment. But Jeremy Hunt has not got the vision for the future, whereas Boris has.
David, what would you like to say in response?
Well, I just think that 1 year ago, I'm looking at my internet, it says the UK backs the deal despite they still backed the deal a year ago, but now Pompeo's here, all of a sudden we're going, there'll be consequences, considering they've already been sanctioned up to the hilt.
I think can only mean one thing, war. David, I think you're totally misunderstanding what's happened today. The Iranian president made a speech where he said that unless Europe changed America's mind, they would restart their nuclear enrichment program. And Jeremy Hunt's response to that say, well, if they do, there will be consequences. What else was he going to say?
Yes, but that doesn't break the deal. That doesn't break.
Really? Well, it wouldn't break the deal if they started their enrichment program again. Of course, it would.
Well, it's just that we're not saying we want to stick to the deal. Let's bring the deal back, is what we were saying a year ago.
David, I'd be more than happy to attack Jeremy Hunt on any other occasion, but I think on this one, actually, he's trying to stay in the right place as much as he possibly can. The difficulty is that Trump has upped the ante, and the Iranians are beginning to respond to it, and that puts the UK, France and Germany in a difficult position. I think we would be better served if we had other junior ministers who were doing the kind of groundwork, the Sherpa work between one another, and I think Alistair was actually very good at doing that, in particular in relation to Iran.
You've been a Foreign Office Minister, haven't you? Have I recalled that correctly?
For about 5 minutes. In 1865, yes.
Oh, well, I won't bother asking you a question.
326 days to
Is that
be precise,
all?
yes.
But okay,
Keeps a diary, remember.
I will ask you a question.
No, I know, because it says on my pension thing 326 days.
But just, you know how the Foreign Office works. I mean, when they're looking at whether they continue to support this deal, obviously they've got to weigh up the relationship with the United States, relationship with other European countries, and indeed what they think is the right thing. I mean, what kinds of discussions are held within the Foreign Office?
Well, actually, on Iran, Britain, France, and Germany always had a pretty shared position for a long time, and had to persuade successive American administrations to come on board. Because in the US, it's not just about the president; it's also about Congress. And so, for instance, on the day that George Bush made his speech about the axis of evil and included Iran in it, which many of us thought was a terrible mistake at the time, Jack Straw had just sent a new ambassador to Tehran, and so who was immediately sent back because we were considered to be party to the American deal and all the rest of it. And Jack Straw repeatedly and regularly, I think, did a very valiant job in trying to get the US to sign up to the European version of what we should do in relation to Iran.
He's got a very good book coming out on Iran, which I commissioned, one of the last books I commissioned when I was in publishing. I think it's coming out in July. David, thank you for your question. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. More of your questions to Peter Bone, Chris Bryant, William Clouston and Joy Lo Dico in just a moment. It's 8:32. Time for the LBC News headlines with Andy Ivey.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have chosen not to use a title for their newborn son. He'll be known as Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, though he could have become Earl of Dumbarton. Tensions between the US and America over Huawei's involvement in 5G networks have been discussed at talks between the Foreign Secretary and his US counterpart in London. Mike Pompeo has urged the government to stay vigilant after the Trump administration warned the Chinese tech firm may provide a route for Beijing to spy on the West through Britain's telecoms infrastructure. One person's been seriously injured after a building collapsed in Birmingham. West Midlands police were called to Victoria Street in the Hockley area just before 6 this evening. LBC weather: showers clearing southern parts tonight, but continuing over the northeast and northwest of England and Scotland. Drier elsewhere, a low of 4 degrees. Tomorrow, rain in the east, drier and brighter in the north and southwest, highs of 15 degrees.
This is LBC.
Your future is here. The Global Academy. A forward-thinking state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Get the very best start in your media career at a school where you can study GCSE and A-levels alongside the vocational media qualifications you need. Visit globalacademy.com to find out more.
I know what the Rachel hairstyle is. I know how to write hello on a calculator. I know the name of the world's first cloned sheep. And I know which part of the room you should never put baby in. But I don't know my state pension.
Check your state pension and see how you can build on it with a workplace or other pension. Get to know your pension at yourpension.gov.uk.
Managed to fill those jobs yet?
Oh, I'm struggling.
You know Mark in HR? He was telling me about Hiring Hub. It connects you to loads of vetted specialist recruitment agencies, so you can widen your candidate search quickly, without any hassle.
Really?
Yeah. You post a job, and recruitment agencies you select send you their best candidates.
Want to fill professional jobs faster? Search Hiring Hub and post your job today.
Mark's nice, isn't he?
Really?
There's more to Volvo than meets the eye. Beyond our history of world-first safety innovations, we've evolved to bring you a multi-award-winning range on a mission to make life that little less complicated. See how simple Scandinavian design delivers an intuitive driving experience. Connect, control, and be entertained by technology designed around you. Feel inspired by the innovation that drives Volvo. It's all there for you to experience at the Volvo Evolved Showcase from the 11th to 12th of May at your local retailer, with offers across the range. Register today at volvoevolved.co.uk.
Hello, I'm a Resound Hearing Aid. I'm sick of nobody taking any notice of me because I'm so little. Well, I'm not taking it anymore. I'm not just small.
I'm mighty. I'm rechargeable. I connect to phones, play music and link up to the TV. Plus, there's £300 off me at Specsavers this May.
Ask in store for details.
Imagine getting all kinds of rewards just by going about your everyday shopping. Earn points every time you spend, then use your points to get the things you actually want. Filling up at the petrol station could lead to getting your hands on the latest fashion, and supermarket checkout could even take you to airport check-in. Use points to get whatever it is you want. Let's make life more rewarding with the American Express Preferred Rewards Gold Credit Card. Don't live life without it. Representative 57.6% APR variable. Annual fee applies after the first year. Terms apply. 18 plus, subject to approval. Search Amex Gold.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:36. Don't forget we are streaming live on our Facebook page, on Twitter, on YouTube and on our website at lbc.co.uk. Just to remind you, if you've just tuned in, Peter Bone is with us, Conservative MP for Wellingborough. Chris Bryant is Labour MP for
Rhondda. You can do it.
William Clouston is leader of the SDP, and Joy Lo Dico is an Evening Standard columnist and former editor of the Londoners Diary, which I used to appear in, not so much nowadays.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Right,
I'll drop a few stories in if that's what you like.
Right, let's go to your next question. It's from Robin in Whitehaven. Hello, Robin.
Hello, Ian. I'm just wondering if the panel can shed some light on anything regarding John Bercow's future, and if he was to resign either now or in the near future. Myself, personally, I think he's done a fantastic job. He's brought calm and a sense of sensibility to the House of Commons. Just wondering how the panel, if John did, I don't think he's actually announced himself yet that he's gone, but I'm just thinking what the panel would think the qualities would be needed to be a good speaker. Basically, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much for that. William Clouston.
I think to those who think that politics is sort of descending into a sort of branch of the entertainment industry, I think actually the speaker's contributed to that. He certainly appears to like his own persona and voice. He's not what you'd call a sort of neutral speaker, is he? He's not someone that just gets the business through. But on the other hand, he has sort of, he's been entertaining, hasn't he? So I don't know. I haven't got any strong opinions on it, to be honest. I think he's obviously he's divided opinions slightly, but I don't. I think it's. We'll get another speaker eventually. I know that many Conservatives don't like him very much now.
Who would you like to see as next speaker?
I think someone a little bit less sort of self-conscious, I think. I haven't got it. I'm not going to give you a name. I haven't thought about it.
I think there's something rather wonderful about the drama. And my mother was always hooked on television when Betty Boothroyd was on. So in fact, actually having a very charismatic speaker is pretty good for democracy. I mean, I think Bercow will go, but I think he'll be lured away by an amazing kind of TV deal as it is. He's already a member of a speakers agency. The whole world was tuning in to BBC Parliament. The viewing figures were sort of 500,000 a night for some,
He's always been a good speaker. And he used to coach people, didn't he, in the Conservative Party? He was the sort of go-to when he wasn't giving speeches at Conservative Way Forward and all that sort of thing.
No, he is a brilliant speaker in the sense of the usual meaning.
Does a good Enoch Powell impression.
And Tony Benn.
Benn.
No, it's fantastic Tony Benn impression.
Yeah.
And he's also done a very good job with having taken the costumes away. He's still managed to kind of be part of the costume drum. Do you like it? Well, he's still managed to get the European. He went to Brussels and was mobbed in the street. Everybody in the US knows his name. I mean, he's actually the big star. He's our big export from Brexit.
So, what qualities do you think a successor should have?
Well, I think we'll probably have to find one who perhaps doesn't talk to the Remain divisions quite so much in the background. So somebody possibly a little bit more neutral. But over the years, I would hope they would develop into a good enough character, but they have to be somebody that the British public actually sort of find engaging if you actually want people interested in politics.
Peter Bone, you will have a vote to cast when a successor is chosen. What qualities do you look for in a good speaker?
Well, first of all, look at John Bercow. He has been a great champion for this Mother of Parliament. And
stop it. You just tried to wind me up.
And he has really transformed it, and he's a Remainer, but he has done... He's made decisions which have been good for Parliament and for backbenchers, and I hold him in the highest regard. And we need somebody who will stand up from Parliament. And I do think it needs to be somebody who's not been a minister, not had a senior role, someone who's been less than a minister for a year at least, and there's certainly at least one candidate, if not more, in this room who wants to be speaker.
And I'm not putting my name forward, Peter.
No, but I think obviously Chris would be a very good speaker, but there are other candidates, and Lindsay Hoyle is, I would think, quite rightly favourite, but Chris equally would do a very good job. But I really am very much against somebody who's had a senior role in the government suddenly pretending to be the champion of Parliament.
Harriet Harman.
No way. It's wrong for someone who's been leader of the Labour Party twice, even if it was only in a temporary role. How can that person suddenly become the champion of Parliament? No, it has to be somebody who's basically been on the backbenches and who's a parliamentarian. Lindsay Hoyle, absolutely. Chris Bryant, absolutely.
Chris, have you actually formally declared that you're running to succeed John Bercow?
Well, you know the formal lines that there isn't a vacancy, blah blah blah. But I have said that when or maybe it's if John goes, I'll be a candidate. Incidentally, I do think John has been a good speaker because he has brought the drama of politics into the chamber, and I think that is part of what, that has revitalised the way we've done our business, and I think that's good. And Joy's absolutely right to say you go to China or Hong Kong, and his face is known, and he's quite a hero. I think he has some minor flaws.
Like what?
Well, I think perhaps the speaker should only speak when strictly necessary.
And you'll do that, Chris?
Yes.
Now, can we have a try? How would you say my name if you called me?
Peter Bone.
Mr. Peter Bone.
I just don't think. Well, anyway, so there's and also I don't think the speaker should have a great agenda.
He wouldn't call you.
I think.
Fair point.
No, to be. Incidentally, there's another thing I think that John has slipped into doing, which Michael Martin did, which is that it's calling people in order of seniority in the chamber. And actually, sometimes I think it's better to mix it up a bit. There's no need for Prime Minister's questions to go on for 50 minutes. The Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition now take like 25 minutes of it. And so you should just get them to cut down their time to write 6 minutes and then have more backbenchers in during that half hour. And likewise, if you have a Prime Minister's statement, you don't have to call everybody for 3.5 hours, keeping the Prime Minister there. You could have an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes, and the people who didn't get called that week get called first.
You're absolutely right. Keeping the Prime Minister for 3 hours is a pointless exercise, especially when most of the questions are the same. And then make sure they're called next time.
And also, it means that the newer members from marginal seats always get called last. Once somebody's already asked that question like 17 times, and the Prime Minister says, "Well, I refer you to the answer I gave 17 minutes ago."
How do you think that you are seen among Conservative MPs? I mean, do you think you're seen as a bit too partisan, or have been seen like that in the past?
I feel as if I'm being interviewed for the job.
You are.
But you haven't got a vote, Ian.
No, but I can exert a bit of influence.
Look, I mean, I think the most important thing is that a speaker has to be authoritative enough in the chair. Whilst being gentle enough with colleagues. Part of the role is quite pastoral. I remember Michael Martin, one of the things he used to do, if you got into any kind of sort of trouble, or you had a family problem or whatever, he would, you'd get a little phone call and you'd be asked in for a cup of tea, and he'd just ask whether you were all right. And that's an element of the job that I think is important. I mean, in the last couple of years, I've worked with even Philip Davis on a private member's bill to tackle assaults on emergency workers. I'm doing a lot of stuff on acquired brain injury at the moment, and we've got a debate on it tomorrow afternoon because I care passionately about that, and I've been working closely with ministers on it.
You really want someone who believes in Parliament, and I'd say
he's written a 2-volume history of the place.
And if he'd only agreed that it was a Mother of Parliament, I might vote for it.
So can I just explain this, Rao? So he keeps on using this phrase, Mother of Parliament.
And he's wrong.
He's completely wrong. It was invented by John. He knows perfectly well, and he's just winding me up. But John Bright said, who was a Liberal politician, he said, England, which has mothered parliaments, still didn't give the vote to everybody in the middle of the 19th century. And he was criticising Parliament, not praising it.
And it's England that's the mother of parliaments, not Parliament that is the mother of the world.
And some people make it even worse by saying the mother of all parliaments, which makes it a sort of weird thing. And we weren't even the first Parliament.
Once these things start.
Well, I think just as a little bit of training for you, Chris, listen to this.
Mr. Peter Bone. 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 Mr. Peter Bone.
So go on, how would you say it?
I'm just going to say Peter Bone.
That's
I'm sorry. I think there are elements where the speaker should just sometimes be boring.
That's not going to make a viral YouTube clip for our website, people.
I'm terribly sorry, but my main aim in life is not to make a viral YouTube.
Having had an entertainer.
Though my fight with Kay Burley did actually achieve that.
Oh, anybody that hasn't seen that, look it up on YouTube. That is a classic.
So we're now the best of mates.
but not until 10 o'clock, obviously. Right, we are going to move on in a moment. 0345 6060973 to take more of your questions. It's 8:46.
James O'Brien, Monday to Friday from 10 a.m.
If you think I'm exaggerating, then tell me why the phrase, "why can't we train our own," became so commonplace during that campaign. I don't care where you were born. I care how good you are at nursing. Why can't we train our own? That was one of the ugliest refrains, wasn't it, to sneak under the radar after we'd normalised nastiness. Why can't we train our own? There's something wrong with foreigners.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
What do you need to get the very best start in your media career? How about state-of-the-art TV and music studios, industry-beating radio studios, the very latest technology, the opportunity to learn from the best minds in the industry? At a school where you can study GCSEs and A-levels alongside the vocational media qualifications you need. Your future is here. The Global Academy, a forward-thinking state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Visit globalacademy.com to find out more.
Have you ever bought an investment sold by Barclays, Halifax, Lloyds, Santander or any other bank or financial advisor? Investments like stocks and shares ISAs, investment bonds and certain types of pension can be risky. If you lost money with one of these investments, you could be owed thousands of pounds in compensation. Even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, here at Goodwin Barrett we can still help. To start your free assessment with Goodwin Barrett, text GOOD to 60777. That's GOOD to 60777.
Managed to fill those jobs yet?
Oh, I'm struggling.
You know Mark in HR? He was telling me about Hiring Hub. It connects you to loads of vetted specialist recruitment agencies, so you can widen your candidate search quickly, without any hassle.
Really?
Yeah. You post a job, and recruitment agencies you select send you their best candidates.
Want to fill professional jobs faster? Search Hiring Hub and post your job today.
Mark's nice, isn't he?
Really?
At Thomas Cook, we know a thing or two about holidays. In fact, we've been perfecting them since 1841. That holiday feeling has always started with us. So, why trust anyone else? This summer, dive into our new generation Casa Cook and Cook's Club hotels and save up to £300 on selected holidays. Visit thomascook.com or your local Thomas Cook store today. Don't just book it, Thomas Cook it. Minimum spend, conditions apply, ATOL protected.
Before you head off for a fun weekend, check you've got everything. Smart key entry and push button start, automatic climate control, advanced safety system. We've already packed them all into the spacious Jazz EX for you, now at 0% APR representative with no deposit. Visit honda.co.uk to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
10 to 9. Let's continue with your questions to our panel. Peter Bone, Chris Bryant, William Clouston and Joy Lo Dico. Aaron is in Stafford. Aaron, what would you like to ask?
Hello, Ian.
Hi.
I just wanted to understand why it was after the local elections where Remain parties were voted resoundingly, why it is that Theresa May, Jeremy Corbyn have come out saying that was clearly a message for them to get on with Brexit. I mean, I don't. I'm an absolute layman in terms of politics, but I really don't understand how any right-thinking people could possibly interpret that as a clear message for them to go and get on with Brexit.
Right, well, let's put that to our panel. Joy.
Well, it was an astonishing night, and I kept sort of waking up in the middle of the night going, what is going on? I agree with your caller that the interpretation in the morning seemed to bear no resemblance to the reality at all, and you could pick off seat after seat after seat where people who wouldn't necessarily want to go out and vote went out and voted to make as a form of protest. And there's one seat I followed quite closely, which is the Cotswolds, where I've got a place, where Jeremy Clifton Brown is a sort of Brexit MP representing a Remain constituency, and that they went out in their sort of masses to vote for the Liberal Democrats, who really weren't a force in the land.
Do you not think, though, that it was just a largely, not entirely, but largely just a protest vote against the two main parties, and that anybody else who was on the ballot paper got the votes, whether it was an independent or a Liberal Democrat. People just didn't want to vote for the two main parties.
Well, the thing is, if you dismiss this as a protest vote, what else can you dismiss as a protest vote? If all our votes are kind of non-directional, just angry at the government, at that point we can start talking about Brexit having been a massive protest vote.
Well, it was.
So we can't dismiss it on those grounds.
So we're dismissing it then?
No, I'm not dismissing it at all. I'm just saying that, you can't say that X million people voted one way just because they wanted to protest. There will be some people who positively voted Green or for the Liberal Democrats or for an independent. But the fact that the independents went up massively this time, I suggest to you there was a large element of protest there.
Now, I've yet to kind of drill down into those figures because it was about 500 plus for the independents.
660 increase.
And presumably some of those are entirely locally based candidates, but a lot of it must be this sort of feeling that nothing is happening in government, nobody's actually looking after local issues, we're going to vote for a local candidate.
It could be, or it could just be a plague on all the other houses. I'm just going to vote for an independent.
Possibly.
Could be.
And then there's also the kind of, I don't think you can draw some conclusions from those local elections, but because the Brexit party wasn't on the billing, you can't really project that much. And also it was certainly not all the seats, it was about 40% of the country went to that vote.
And it was just England. There was no elections in Scotland, none in Wales, and there were in Northern Ireland. Peter Bone, what lessons do you draw from those elections?
Well, they certainly weren't about bin collections, that's for sure. It was, as always, voted on the national issue of the time, and there were no Brexit candidates on the ballot paper. I think what will happen is when we have the European Union parliamentary elections in a couple of weeks' time or so, we'll get the view of the whole country on the state of
Do you regard
Europe.
that almost as a second referendum in itself?
I think it pretty much is a second referendum. I mean, that's how people aren't going to vote whether they to send someone to the European Parliament. They're going to vote on their view on Brexit. They're either going to vote for a Brexit party or for a Main party. And I think when you look at that, I think it will give a very clear answer to where the country is on Brexit.
And what percentage of the vote do you think the Conservative Party will get?
Yes, I think you should go out and support Eurosceptic Conservative candidates anywhere.
But you can't support candidates because you're voting for a party, aren't you?
That is a slight technical problem with my argument.
In this election.
Yeah, I mean, the problem we've got is when we've had a Prime Minister who was going to take us out of the European Union on the 29th of March, told Commons 108 times, and when you don't do that, I think what you finish up with is people saying they've lost trust in the Conservative Party, and I just hope people will go out and vote for Brexit-leaning candidates.
Well, you can't. As I say, we can't vote for candidates. Are you advocating that?
Put it like this: if
Conservatives who are a bit hacked off might consider voting for the Brexit party.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to vote for the Conservative Party, I'd rather they voted for the Brexit Party than the Liberal Party. So. But, you've
just stayed roughly within the bounds of acceptability to keep your whip there, I think.
Do I have a whip left? I don't know.
That's true. That is a very good point. Chris Bryant.
What?
Answer the question.
Which question?
Local elections.
Sorry. Look, I think I disagree with Peter in the sense that I think that there were Brexit candidates. The Tory party candidates surely are Brexit candidates. The only reason the government is there at the moment is to deliver Brexit, according to the Prime Minister. So I presume that all the Brexit candidates for the Conservative Party did rather badly, and the Liberals seem to do rather well.
No,
the
Chris,
Labour
that's not
Party.
Right. No, you can't. If you look at the results. Let's look at two seats. Chelmsford, the Conservatives did absolutely appalling. Vicky Ford is a Remainer Conservative.
No, she's not. She's voted for Brexit. She's voted for your version of Brexit.
But that isn't
She's
Brexit.
voted for the Prime Minister's deal.
Lee Rowley, North East Derbyshire, we gained control of that. We won 13 seats. Labour lost 17 seats. He's a tremendous Brexiteer.
Very passionate.
Clearly, there is some. I didn't think he'd rise to that, but he did. The more serious point is, I think that if you are a Leave type Conservative, there wasn't a reason to vote for the Conservative Party because the government hasn't delivered Brexit. And if you're a Remain type Conservative, and there are those as well, there was no reason to vote Conservative because the government is trying to implement Brexit. And you could say much the same for the Labour Party. I mean, is the problem that people don't know quite what they're getting on either side of the fence. And I think one of my biggest anxieties is that I think that the Brexit mandate is now wearing pretty thin.
Andrew Adonis,
which is why I want another referendum.
Andrew Adonis, who I interviewed on Sunday, he's tweeted tonight, let's get this straight, Labour is the party of Remain, is it?
Well, Andrew often,
watch out what you say.
Tweets in hope rather than.
But he is an official Labour Party candidate.
Look, I'll explain why I think this is complicated for Labour, because I voted to get my constituency voted to leave fairly narrowly. It's like 53-47, something like that. I then voted against triggering Article 50 because I didn't think the Prime Minister had the faintest idea what she wanted to achieve out of the process. And I said in the debate, and if I lose my seat out of this, I will lose my seat. But I can only vote for what I really believe is in the interests of my constituents. A bit of kind of Edmund Burke sort of stuff. I didn't expect the general election to be 6 weeks later, but it was. And I doubled my majority. Now, so I think politics is so fluid at the moment, and lots of voters are as divided, uncertain as politicians are in Parliament.
Chris, don't you think, though, that if you stick to your principles, even if voters don't necessarily agree with you, they tend to lend you vote for you because they actually think you believe in something?
Dominic Grieve would agree with you.
Yes, well, I do agree with that, and curiously, this Parliament, which has had so few, I mean, the whipping organisations on both sides of the House hardly seem to matter anymore.
We're running out of time.
Local elections very, very patchy. Depends where you are. In the northeast of England, where I live, I'm from Northumberland. If you think this was a Remainer vote, have a look at the results, because it wasn't. Very, very patchy. Depends where you are. And the decomposing Liberal Democrats did well in Remainer areas. That's what you'd expect.
No, so that's not true.
No, they did. And the broader picture, I think, from British politics now is that people are crying out for an alternative, and people really didn't want to vote either Conservative or Labour. The gap in British politics, and it isn't a gap, it's a massive black hole, is for a party which is left of centre on economics and public services, and on towards the right on cultural issues, and that is the SDP, and that's where the gap is, and that's why we're here to fight.
The problem is when Labour loses all its Remain voters, it loses seats. And our Remain voters are the ones that are most likely to leave us. So unless the Labour Party is prepared to adopt a confirmatory referendum, as nearly all our members want,
you'll lose the North-East. I promise you, you'll lose the North-East.
Let's not go into that. Final quick question, one-word answer from all of you. This is from Maggie in Sevenoaks, who asked, what would you have named the royal baby? Peter Bone.
Archie.
Joy.
I would say Archie, but give it a good reason, and I would say name it after the great Scottish striker Archie Gemmill.
Oh, very good. Chris?
Leroy. It's the French for the king.
Bertie.
Well, you win the award, Peter, for the most boring answer.
Well, we look as if we've let you down.
Sorry about that. I thought your answer was the most interesting, but there we
Iain,
are.
who would
Hillary.
Well, I was on CNN with Bonnie Greer earlier, and she said Denzel.
Okay.
After Washington.
Yeah.
I remember Denzel Washington playing Richard III in, I saw him in New York, and I remember he has that line, this vile, deformed body. And the whole audience laughed because he's not got a vile, deformed body.
Probably not a good thing. Right, that brings us to the end of Cross Question. Peter Bone,